Hi everyone, I'm Melanie. Welcome back to my dark corner of the library, which is finally dark because I'm shooting at night. I had to buy a ring light in order to light this properly, so let me know if it works or not. It was a lot of trial and error to get lighting proper, so bear in mind my camera is almost 10 years old, so might be a little grainy because of the lack of light, but we'll see how it goes. Today we're going to talk about everything that I read in June. I read about 9 books in total, 1 being a graphic novel, 4 of them being fantasy, 1 being sci-fi, 2 horror, but 1 being more fiction rather than horror, and then lastly 1 nonfiction. So I thought I'd walk you through what I read from the beginning of the month all the way to the end in chronological order so we can have a little bit of structure to this video. So the first book I read in June was The Crimson Moth by Kristen Ciccarelli. It's also called Heartless Hunter in the US. This book is about a kingdom who expelled all witches and magic, and they continue to hunt down witches regularly and kill them. We follow our main character Rune, who is a concealed witch, as well as a socialite who moonlights as a vigilante called the Crimson Moth in order to help save witches and anyone who's helping them escape. In order to learn more about who the witch hunters are targeting, Rune decides to get close to the head witch hunter, who also turns out to have suspicions of his own about her. So I read this book in a day, so I had a very fun time reading it. It definitely is more true enemies to lovers, I would say, because there are higher stakes between both of them, and I think the characters were well written. This book definitely felt more new adult than YA to me, which was a little easier for me because YA sometimes gets a little too young for me at this point, but this one I didn't feel that way. So I definitely enjoyed this one more than I probably would have had it been true YA. I gave this book 4.5 stars, mainly because the ending, I wasn't sure if I liked where it's going, but I will definitely give it a chance. But yeah, I highly recommend if you're into romantasy, witch hunter, enemies to lovers, it's fun. This one's the first romantasy in a while that I really enjoyed. The next book I read in June is Tender is the Flesh by Augustina Basterica. Set in a world when all of the animals become toxic to humans, a new type of meat is introduced to the palate. Humans are now bred for consumption as special meat. With his wife gone and his father addled with dementia, Marcos goes to work regularly as the right-hand man of the head of the special meat production center. Then one day, a special gift is delivered to his doorstep, a live specimen of the finest quality. And from there, we see what happens. We learn a lot about what this new world is like, and it's honestly a kind of hard and disturbing read, so please check trigger warnings for this one. It's not for the faint of heart. It didn't make me want to become vegan, but it easily could have, so beware. This book is extremely hard to read just because of the subject matter, and it is extremely detailed about this new world and all the processes put in place. Though it is a hard read, it is very well done. No pun intended. The relationships between Marcos and his wife and Marcos and his sister are very interesting in this new world, kind of battling multiple ways of coping with this new normal. And it was very interesting to see how people function differently in this new society. Marcos's characterization I thought was really impactful, and the ending definitely hit you with a punch. So I definitely highly recommend if you can stomach it. I gave this 4.75 stars. I felt weird giving it 5 stars just because of the subject matter of the book. I was like, am I crazy if I do give this 5 stars? But just, this is a very good book, so read it. Read it if you can. The next book I read was Morning Star by Pierce Brown. This is the 3rd book in the original Red Rising trilogy. It's one of my favorites of the 3. I think I gave Red Rising 5 stars, Golden Sun 4, and then this I also gave 5 stars because it was a great ending to the original trilogy. I know it continues on. I can't say too much about what this book is about because it is part of a series, but this book picks up the pieces of where Golden Sun left us hanging and definitely takes us to the finish line. I'll give you a little summary about Red Rising as well. Red Rising is about a young man born red, which is the lowest caste system on Mars, who is thrust into a world he didn't know existed to become one of the golds, which is the highest color in the caste system, and then learn how to destroy them. The first book is definitely more adult Hunger Games, and I had a blast reading it, but it's not what you would expect a sci-fi book to be, I'll tell you that. The second 2 definitely lean way more sci-fi. I think the first one leans more fantasy. One of the main reasons I love this series so much is because Pierce Brown is so good at writing battle strategy, and he leaves a lot of twists at the end of chapters, so it makes you want to keep reading. And even though it is sci-fi and complicated, it's still pretty easy to follow, and I never got too confused about what's going on. I think that's my gripe with sci-fi in general. A lot of it can be confusing and it's hard to follow, but this one definitely not. It's very digestible. The ending hit home for me on this one, and there were some sad deaths like you can expect in any of his books, but it wrapped up nicely for me, which is why I'm not sure I will continue on to the rest of the series. I haven't fully decided yet. I probably will eventually, but I'm gonna let this one settle for now and see how it goes. I also felt like he did a good job keeping Darrow's purpose at the forefront, even though it does change with him throughout the book, but I think there still felt reasoning behind his choices because of that, and I appreciate that. Also, some of my favorite characters are to come out of the series, so if you like some fun, kooky characters, this is definitely your series. The next book I read is The Voyage of the Damned by Frances White. I actually ended up DNFing this book halfway through. I do know what happens in the end because I skipped forward because it was like impossible to find actual spoilers online, and I don't think I felt like I missed out on anything, so I'm kind of happy that I DNF'd it. But this book is about 12 heirs from 12 provinces of Concordia that are each bestowed with a special power called the Blessing. They journey together alone on a boat powered by the Emperor from a faraway distance in order to visit the sacred goddess's mountain and celebrate peace between the provinces. On the first night, one of the heirs is mysteriously murdered, and with only 11 of them on board, it has to be one of them. Ganymedes, our main character, is from the Fish province. He's also sort of the class clown of the group, and he takes it upon himself to figure out who the murderer is. But as more bodies drop like flies, time is of the essence for Ganymedes, as he only has 12 days until they reach the sacred mountain. I love the concept of this book, a murder mystery on a secluded ship with a multitude of different types of characters. I got halfway through and it felt like I didn't learn any new information about what he was discovering, and it wasn't really progressing, and it kind of got repetitive, so I ended up DNFing. And I don't always DNF books, I sometimes push through, but this one I thought I was gonna soft DNF and like figure out later, but I just kind of didn't really have the drive to pick it up again. So I fast forwarded to look into spoilers just to see what happens, and I'm very happy that I did DNF because I do not think I would have been happy to find out what happened. But I could definitely see a lot of people enjoying this book, so just because I DNF'd it doesn't mean you shouldn't pick it up. It was written in a fun way and it was funny at times, but the main character got a little annoying after a while. It didn't really feel like he had a lot of depth other than his obsession with food, making fun of himself, and simping after a boy, which is fine, but I just needed a little more from my main character. The next book I read is actually a graphic novel. It's called Satania by Velman and Carrascoet. I've read one other graphic novel by this duo, and I thought it was crazy, dark, disturbing, but beautifully illustrated, so I wanted to see what else they did together. This one is about a girl who takes an expedition of people with her to find her missing brother, who went beneath the earth to uncover a new world he thought existed called Satania. As it's a graphic novel, I can't really give you a long summary, but that's basically the gist of it. This one is very weird. It has a lot more of a plot than Beautiful Darkness did, but this one I think is even weirder and kind of grosser. I'll show you some pages from it. It's still very pretty, but this one is definitely more goopy gross factor than the other one. But yeah, this one was also a wild ride. There was one scene towards the end that I found really compelling, a mix of both the writing and the illustration, which I thought was extremely well done. But this is definitely not for everyone. Our main character is topless for absolutely no reason for half of the book, which I wasn't a super big fan of, but it is written by two young men, so they did it because they could. As I'm not a big graphic novel reader, I don't really have a way to rate them, so I'm not going to give this a rating because I only really have it to base off of one other graphic novel by the same people. But it's definitely weird and gross and dark, and if you like that, then go for it. The next book that I read is Earthlings by Sayaka Murata. This book is about a young girl named Natsuki and her cousin Yu, who are both convinced that they are from a different planet. With the help of her toy hedgehog, who is also from another planet and bestowed magical powers on her, she navigates life to adulthood and ultimately gets married and ends up estranged from Yu. And it just gets weirder from there. This is one of the weirdest books that I have ever read. And I've read a lot of weird books. Definitely check trigger warnings on this one. It gets very dark also, so just a heads up on that. I don't really know how to describe this book. It's better going in knowing absolutely nothing like I did. And yeah, just buckle down for the wild ride. It's a different writing style than I'm used to, but I quite enjoyed it. As a lover of weird books, I kind of knew what to expect coming into this, but not at all at the same time. I was not expecting the ending, but I also wasn't surprised at all. But yeah, it definitely gets weirder, if I can't emphasize that enough. Although this is very dark and disturbing, as well as frustrating at times, I do think Murata got the point across. At least I felt she got the message of you should embrace the feeling that you are not normal, as others might feel the same way. And whether she wanted to say that or not and just wanted to write a weird book, that's totally fine. And that's what I got out of it. I also felt like I've read books that feel like they're trying to say something deep and are super surface level, so it's kind of fun to read a book that probably wasn't too deep, but I still got something out of it. I found the editing quite poetic, but still, I ended up giving this one a 4 stars. The next book I read is The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. This book is about a multi-state island called Dara that was recently conquered by the now emperor, uniting all 6 states under one ruler for the first time. As you can imagine, not everyone is happy under this new reign, and plots of rebellion start to form, and people in high positions start to take action in order to change the tide in their favor. This book spans a few decades with a lot of characters and battle strategy and politics and tested friendships written in short character-focused vignettes. I will start off by saying this book has got a lot of flack because people say it starts to read like a history book, and I'm not going to say they're wrong, but this would be a very fun history book to read. I don't think this book is for everyone, but it was for me, and that's what matters in the end. The writing, the characters hit home for me, and I ate it all up. There is a lot of characters and a lot of stuff going on, as it does span a long period of time, but I never felt that it was hard to follow and that I couldn't remember who we were focusing on at the time. I think he did a good job making sure there were a lot of interesting things going on while you still learned a lot of the history of Dara and the people that you're reading about as well. The character development was really great, and I really liked the vignette style. Not everyone will, but it worked for me. And there were a lot less fantasy elements than I was expecting, but maybe that'll change in the rest of the series, but I'm looking forward to finding out. I gave this book 4.75 stars. The second to last book I read was Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. This is the second book in the Throne of Glass series, though it is the third book I read since I read Assassin's Blade first. I chose to do that and it worked for me, but you do what you want to do. Since it is in the middle of a series, I can't really talk about too much. This book continues to follow Selena Sardathian as the king's assassin, while she struggles to uncover secrets, save her friends, as well as still obey the king's orders. That's pretty much all I can say, but if you've read the series, you know. If you don't, you gotta read the first few books anyways to get there, so sorry. I'll try to keep this as spoiler-free as possible. I did have a fun time reading this book. I read it pretty quickly. The first half was a bit slow for me, but the second half definitely picked up as things started happening. Selena did get on my nerves a little bit in this book. She's supposed to be a very super smart assassin, but it didn't come across that way a lot of the time. She kind of kept blindly trusting everything anyone said to her, whether they were friend or foe. So that was interesting, and it kind of took her forever to figure out a lot of details that I feel like SJM was planting hardcore, but like took her so long to actually realize herself. So that kind of got frustrating. She also doesn't really feel like a true assassin to me, even though she's supposed to be Aderlin's most deadly assassin. I think that's probably SJM trying to make her likable and doesn't want her to murder a ton of people, but it kind of makes it a lot less believable that she is the top assassin. So that's one of my gripes with this book series as well. I did really enjoy the ending, and I'm curious to see where the next book takes us. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. And last but certainly not least is The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. This is a nonfiction book compiling 2 different pieces of writing from Baldwin. In a letter addressed to his nephew, as well as in an essay, James Baldwin talks about his life growing up in Harlem, his relationship with religion and becoming a youth minister. He describes his meeting with Elijah Muhammad from the Nation of Islam, and culminates with his views on what humanity should become in order for Black people to be fully free in America. This is the first book I've ever annotated in my life, but I could not outline anything or mark pages because I will definitely be coming back to this book. This book is so impactful and I believe everyone should read this book. It's only 100 pages, so why not? But I've always wanted to read something he's written, and I'm kind of glad I picked this up first because it's nonfiction and it's his actual thoughts and views. And wow, it's crazy that this was written in 1963, but it is still so relevant 60 years later. Not great, America, not great. He is such a compelling writer and I want to read so much more from him, and I devoured every single word. So yes, I gave this 5 stars. And that wraps up all of the 9 books that I read in June, and I look forward to recapping what I end up reading in July. Thank you for watching. Bye.